Good morning. Today we're going to work on solving systems of equations by elimination. We'll be working with two variables and two equations. This is TEKS from Algebra 1, A5C. Solve systems of two linear equations with two variables for mathematical and real world problems. Today we will just be working on mathematical. So what is elimination method? So far we have learned that you can solve systems by graphing and the point of intersection is a solution. We have learned how to use substitution. Substitution is solving for a variable and plugging it back in. Elimination means adding the two equations together in order that one variable will actually cancel out. Okay. So our first step is to line up our variables. What we mean by that is x's should be on top of each other, y should be on top of each other, and they're going to equal to a constant. Now, this is the big step right here. The coefficients of the variables, in order to add these together, we need the coefficients to be the same number but different signs. In this case, so A, if we have it, great. We don't have to go to B. So sometimes this A, sometimes we already have a positive and a negative. And if we don't, we'll go to B. But we'll do that in later questions. We're going to add the equations together. One of the variables should be eliminated. Once we add the equations together, we're going to solve for the remaining variable. And you'll see what we mean by that. Once we solve for one variable, we plug it into the other equation to solve for the eliminated variable. Now, my example 1 looks perfect. Everything is set up. I'm looking for the same number and different signs. If I have A, the same number but different signs or opposite signs, it's perfect. Now, the only problem with this one is even though finding one variable is easy, my forewarning is it's a fraction. So I'm not going to finish question number 1. What I'm going to show you though is how do we add these together? Well, we add these together by just adding them straight down. But the y's are going to cross out because 5y minus 5y is 0. So what I have left is 8x equals 7. How do we solve for x? We divide by 8 and we get x equals 7 over 8. Now, my apologies because this is the first question and I'm not going to finish it. But I wanted you to be able to at least see what we meant by lining up the variables, making sure the variables have the same number but opposite signs. Okay. So now with these ones, we are going to complete the whole questions. So with this first one, again, we started off. They are lined up already. What we mean is x's are on top of each other, y's are on top of each other, and there's a number at the end. And I have a negative 1y and a positive 1y. So this is set up very nicely to use elimination method. So I'm going to add them straight down. I get 7x equals to 14. Now, how do I get the x by itself? Well, I divide by 7 on both sides, and I get x equals 2. So step 1 is to line them up, and then add them straight down. And when you add them straight down, one variable should be eliminated. Now, this elimination works best if you already see the same number with different signs, or even the same number, same sign, because we'll show you guys how to change the sign on it. So what do I do with that x equals 2? Well, I'm going to plug it into either equation. It does not matter which equation you choose. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the top equation. So I'm going to plug it into the x value. Now, guys, even if you plugged it into the bottom one, you should still get the same answer. Then we distribute. We have 8 minus y equals. Subtract 8 from both sides. We get negative y equals negative 3. Divide by negative 1. We get x equals positive 3. So my final solution is 2, 3. Again, this was already set up for elimination. So we look at question 3. They're lined up. And I see my y's have the same number but different signs. So go ahead and try using elimination method to solve number 3. Pause the video, and when you unpause it, the answer will be there. So hopefully you got 3, 4 as your solution. So what did we do? Adding them straight down. 2 plus 5 was 7x. The y's were 0 y's. They added to 0, so they're gone. And 10 plus 11 is 21. Get the x by itself by dividing by 7. Then I took this 3 and I plugged it back in. Now guys, remember, it does not matter which equation you plugged it into. If you plugged it into the second equation, you actually still get y equals to 4. Because remember, this solution makes both of them true. Okay? So again, right away we would choose elimination if we see the same number with different signs. Now we get to a little bit more complicated. I don't have the same number, okay? So my x's aren't the same, my y's aren't the same. So then I have to decide, how can I make them have the same number? What can I multiply them by to have the same number? So my choices here is if I look at my x's, what's the first number that 7 and 5 both go into? The answer is 35. So I could change both of these into a positive 35 and a negative 35. That is an option. But then I look at my y's, and I have negative 6 and 2. What's the first number that 6 and 2 go into? The answer is 6. So because I already have that number, then it would be easier to change my y's. Again, I have to make them have the same number, but different signs. So this bottom equation, how can I make this bottom equation turn into a positive 6y? What can I multiply it by? Well, the answer is 3. And I'm going to multiply everything in my second equation by 3. So let me rewrite the first one. I always like to rewrite so that it looks a little bit neater so I understand what I did. So I'm going to take that 3 and I'm going to distribute it to all of them. Okay, I have 15x plus 6y equals 57. So what I did there is now I created the same number but different signs. Now I can add them going straight down. So negative 6y plus 6y is no longer there. I have 22x equals 66. Divide by 22, I get x equals 3. Now remember that you can take that x equals 3 and plug it into either equation. I'm going to go ahead and plug it into the top equation. Okay. Distribute into the parentheses. And now I have to solve for y. Subtract 21 on both sides. And divide by negative 6. My final answer is an ordered pair, and my ordered pair is 3, 2. And 3, 2 will make both of the equations true. So let me do another one with you guys, and let's see if you can figure out what we're going to do. So look at this question and try to figure out which variable we should make the same number but different signs. Well, let's be honest. Whatever you answered is probably correct, okay? Because you have choices here. Now, by choices, what I mean is I can make the x's both 5s, but this has to be a negative. I can make the y's both 2, but one of them has to be a negative. So I would probably change this one since I'm multiplying it. So it's your choice what you do. I'll go ahead and make the top x turn into a negative 5x. So what do I need to multiply this equation by to make this a negative 5x? The answer is negative 5. So I'm going to distribute this negative 5 here, here, and here. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it right underneath that equation. So now I have negative 5x minus 5y equals negative 35. So the first step is to make sure that one of the variables has the same number but different signs. And if it doesn't have it already, then you have to multiply one or both of the equations so that they can have the same number but different signs. Okay? Our next step is going to be to add the two equations together. And remember that this step, one of your variables should be eliminated. Now I have 2y minus 5y, and I have 8 minus 35. How do I get the y by itself? I divide by negative 3. I get y equals. Now I'm going to take that y equals 9 and plug it into either equation. I'm going to go ahead and choose the top equation. So x plus 9 equals 7. This is what I substituted back in. How do I get the x by itself? I subtract 9. My answer is x equals negative 2. So my final answer would be negative 2 comma 9. Remember, this is the only ordered pair that should make both of them true. Let's do another one together. Now, I look at this one and say, you know what? It looks actually pretty easy because I already see that this is perfectly set up for elimination. I actually don't need to multiply by anything. I say that because my y's are already lined up and they have the same number but different signs. Okay, so when I add them going straight down, I'm left with 1x equals negative 2. So actually, there's my x value. Plug it back into either equation. And I typically choose the top one unless the bottom one just absolutely looks easier. Okay. Distribute into your parentheses. And solve for y. Next step is to subtract 6 on both sides. Divide by 2. We get y equals to 4. My final ordered pair is negative 2 comma 4. So when he asks you for a solution, that is the only solution that's going to make both of the equations true. Okay, I want you to pause this video and try number 7 on your own. And when you come back, the answer will be there. Hopefully you got the same answer. The final answer is 5 comma 1. So this equation was also, this system was already set up for elimination as well because we had a positive 1x and we had a negative 1x. So what I did is when I added the equations together, my x's eliminated each other, so they're gone. When I added the y's, I had negative 1y equals negative 1. Then I divided both sides by negative 1, and I got y equals 1. Now I took this 1 and I substituted it back into the y value. So I had x minus 3 times 1 equals 2. I distributed. Then I added 3 to both sides, and I got the answer of 5. So as an ordered pair, x comma y. So now we're going to get a little bit more complicated because now if I look at this, guys, they're not even lined up. So my first step is to go ahead and line them up. The easiest thing I recommend is x, y equals a number. So these ones are going to have extra steps. So I'm going to first line them up. Well, how do I move this negative 3y over here? Well, I'm going to add 3y. How do I move this negative 11 to this side? It's going to turn into a plus 11. Okay. Now the next equation. How do I move a negative 10x to the other side? I'm going to add 10x. And then I have a plus 5y. Now I have to move this negative 5 to this side by adding 5 to both sides. So step 1 is line up your variables. Now they are lined up. Step number 2 is add the equations together if you have the same number but different signs. Oh, we're really, really close here. They have the same number, but they don't have different signs. So how can I make one of these turn into a negative 10? Well, the answer is multiplying the whole equation by negative 1. So now that first sign will change, but so does every other sign. Okay. Now add up the equations going straight down. The x's eliminate themselves. Now I have 5 minus 3. I have 2y equals negative 6. Divide by 2. Y equals negative 3. Now I have to take that value and go plug it into either equation. Now guys, it doesn't matter if I plug it in to this equation, to this equation, to this one, or this one. It does not matter. Okay? So pick one, let's plug it in. Let's try, we'll go ahead and do this one. I'm just trying to see which one looks easier, and I don't think anything really matters. I didn't like that the y was all the way over here. This one actually might have been the easiest, but yeah, you know what, we're going to do this one. Only because the x is already on this side. So let's try that one. And guys, I'm doing this with y'all because when you guys are doing it, you're also questioning yourself, like, which one do I plug it into? Did I make the right choice? Well, guys, it doesn't matter. Your answer is actually going to come out the same. Distribute into your parentheses. Combine these like terms. What's the next step? Divide by negative 10. My answer is 2. So when you're done solving for x and y, you rewrite your answer as an ordered pair, x, comma, y. So go ahead and rewatch if you need to, but I want you guys to try number 9 on your own. And when you unpause the video, the answer will be there. The official answer is 3, 2. So first step was to line up the variables. So the first one was already good to go. The second one, I had to move the x over by subtracting x. The y was okay where it was at, and then I had to move the 13 over by subtracting it. Well, once I lined them up, guys, my x's actually eliminated themselves. So then I was left with negative 3y equals negative 6. I divided by negative 3 and got y equals 2. Now remember, I can plug that into either equation. I chose to plug it into the top equation. So x plus 4 equals 7. And then subtracted 4 and got 3. Now guys, again, remember you can plug it in anywhere. I'm going to be honest. Did I pick the easiest one to plug it into? I did not. I had an extra step. If I had plugged it in here, I would have had one less step to do. I would have plugged in a 2 and said 13 minus 5 times 2 would have been 13 minus 10 equals 3. So again, remember, the answer does come out the same. Okay. Only have 2 more questions. Let's see if you can do both of them on your own. So for number 10, try number 10 on your own. I'll help you get started with number 10, but then I want you to do it on your own. My variables are already lined up, but I do not have the same number and different signs. So I can either make this turn into a negative 4 or this turn into a negative 2. What would be easier? It would be easier to multiply the bottom by a positive 2. If I can multiply by a positive, I'm going to multiply by a positive. So go ahead now, freeze this video, and finish this question on your own. Now remember, your answer was going to be exactly the same no matter how you worked it out. Now, because I asked us to multiply by 2, this step should look exactly the same. But here is where it could look different. You could have plugged the 6 into the top equation, and that's okay. Your answer is still going to come out to a negative 7. So here's your answer. Now our last question, I want you guys to do it completely on your own. So pause the video, and when you come back, the answer will be there. Okay. Hopefully you got the answer of 1 comma -2, no matter what elimination you chose to do. I chose to make that -5 turn into a -15, so I multiplied the whole equation by 3. I had 21x minus 15y equals 51. These were eliminated. I ended up with 19x equals 19, so x equals 1. Then when I plugged it back in, I chose to plug it into the top equation, and I got y equals -2. So there is my final answer. So hopefully this video helped you with elimination method. If it helped you at all, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to subscribe to my channel, I will be posting more educational videos. Thanks and have a great day.